Good morning all. So, welcome to the last session, fifth session and the last session of APEC. So, in this session, we are going to deal with a lot of things. Okay. So, firstly, I want you to do self-study of advent of Europeans part. So here I want you to emphasize on, let's say for example, Portuguese, like all the Europeans that came to India, the year of their arrival, their factories, first factory, second factory, where all the established factories, first, second, third, east, west, both coast, fine, west coast, east coast, if at all they established, or else leave it blank, no issues, fine. For some kingdoms, both coast applies, for example, French, British, and to some extent even Dutch, some areas they existed on both the coast, okay. And then their important events, like for example, they fought a war against Sultan of Gujarat, fine. So that is Portuguese, and also they fought a war against the Adil Shahi of Bijapur, fine. They conquered Goa from him. So what kind of relationship they enjoyed with Vijayanagar kingdom? So important events, wars, and their important officials, Francisco de Almeida, Alfonso de Albuquerque, so they were all there. And what were their important contributions or salient features? Contributions or salient features. Let's say for example, they had something called as cartage system. So if you want to send any ship to Europe, they will give you like security, fine. And they also followed this policy of religious conversions, Christianization, fine. And they introduced printing press in India, the cultivation of tobacco in India. So such contributions. So printing press, tobacco, fine. Blue water policy they followed. So like that, their contributions. Similarly, I want you to go about with regard to Dutch, with regard to British, and also French. British, this part we know already, we study in a lot of detail, their important events. So that is the history of India that we study, so you don't have to worry about that, fine. But their relationship with Mughals, that you should know, Britishers, because when they came they were the overlords of India, no? Their relationship with Mughals and Marathas, that you should know, fine. So, and also the conflicts between them, fine, conflict between various European powers in India, okay. So that you should be knowing. So what was the conflict between British and Dutch, British and French, Portuguese and British, so that you should be knowing, okay. That is one area which is pending, okay. So if at all like the famous conflict among them is British East India Company versus French East India Company. The rivalry was present all across India, and the rivalry was there in India also. In India, there was something called as three Carnatic Wars. Fine. So, first Carnatic War, fine. The main reason was Austrian War of Succession, in Europe, fine. They started fighting in India also, and during this, the French Navy, so British, they had strong navy, no? Therefore, they started attacking the French ships, causing severe losses to the France and all. So, French called the navy from Mauritius. So, their army or navy from Mauritius came to India, and there was something called as, in Madras, a very famous battle called as Battle of Saint Thome. Battle of Saint Thome. So, in this battle, French emerged victorious under the leadership of Dupleix, and finally a treaty was signed known as Treaty of Isla Chap. Okay. So, Treaty of Isla Chap. In India, they exchanged these territories, like whatever they had captured from each other, they had exchanged it, and they told from now onwards we will just focus on trade, not onto wars and all, we will just focus on trade. So, they agreed. So, now the second war, the main reason was their meddling or interference in the politics of native rulers. Their meddling or interference in the politics of native rulers. Okay. So, both of them wanted to conquer the political power as well in India. They had conquered the economic power, now they wanted to conquer the political power also. So, what they did? See, two positions were vacant. Two positions were vacant. One is the position of Nawab of Carnatic and the position of Nizam of Hyderabad. Both positions were vacant. So, this was the scenario. So, draw this table, you will understand everything. Okay. So, there were two contenders for both the position. For the position of Nawab of Carnatic, there was a person called as Muhammad Ali, and there was a person called as Chanda Sahib. Both of them were the aspirants for the position of Nawab of Carnatic. And with regard to the position of Nizam of Hyderabad, there was Nasir Jung and there was Muzaffar Jung. Nasir Jung and Muzaffar Jung. Both of them wanted to become the Nizams of Hyderabad. So, now these two people like Muhammad Ali and Nasir Jung went to British, the other two people went to French. So, initially French was victorious. The supporters of French gained both the powerful positions. Later, in a lot of twists and turns, French lost their dominance. Dupleix was called back. Fine. Dupleix returned to France, and then British started dominating. He was the strongest hurdle for the British supremacy in India, but Britishers somehow managed to convince the French authorities that Dupleix is the reason for the tussle between them. Therefore, French, they called back Dupleix, and once Dupleix was called back, and there was a person called as Count de Lally who was sent as his replacement. He was totally inefficient when compared to Dupleix. So, Britishers were able to establish their supremacy. And then, third war, it coincides with 1756 to 63. It coincides with 7-year war. 7-year war for possession of Canada. 7 years war for possession of Canada. So, it ended with what? Treaty of Paris. Treaty of Paris. So, in this war, British clearly established their supremacy. In the Battle of Vandivash, there was something called as Battle of Vandivash, 1760. French were outsmarted, they were defeated, and that was the end of French political ambitions in India. Where is the classes going on? Old Rajendra Nagar, Delhi. Okay, Battle of Vandivash. So this is what I want to know. I want you to know. Battle of Vandivash. Between whom? British and French. That is the final battle. And similarly, see, after this battle, British clearly established their dominance. Among the European powers, they remained the strongest ones. Okay, and 1 year before that, I have to tell you this story also. Battle of Buxar. So let's take it from Battle of Plassey only. Battle of Plassey only. You all know that there was a tussle between the Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla versus British East India Company. There were numerous reasons for it. Misuse of dastaks. What is dastak? Dastak means it is a free trading pass. Free trading pass. Who gave it to them? By Mughals. Which year? 1717. 1717. So Britishers were given, among the European powers, only ones to have the exemption to trade without payment of any customs duty was Britishers. They could show this dastaks. So we have this dastak, we won't pay any tax. So they started, this was given to them by Mughal Emperor, who? Farrukh Siyar, in the year 1717. Okay, and then they started misuse of dastaks. They started misuse of dastaks for personal trade also. So that was causing a lot of loss of revenue to the king. So as a result, he gave warning, and also Britishers were displaying the aggressiveness by importing a lot of weapons, defying the order of the Nawab. They did not follow. They started fortification of their factory. Fine. So the Nawab was enraged, and they also started interfering in the political affairs of Nawab. So they started contacting and encouraging the political opponents of the Nawab. So Nawab was totally enraged, and that is what led to Battle of Plassey, 1757. The main reason is, fine, and you all know, due to the treachery of Mir Jafar, Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla was killed, and Mir Jafar was made the new Nawab. But during the times of Mir Jafar also, the same problem continued, and he was treated like puppet, plus there was severe interference in his administration by the British. Therefore this person also felt strangled. Therefore what he did? He invited Dutch East India Company for his support. So they fought a battle, Dutch East India Company and Nawab of Bengal Mir Jafar versus British. This was known as Battle of Bedara or Chensura, 1759. So in this battle, they lost and Britishers won. Mir Jafar was removed and Mir Qasim was made the Nawab. Okay, he was removed, he was not killed. Mir Qasim was made the Nawab. So now the same fate with Mir Qasim also. The same problems continued, the puppet-like treatment, severe interference in the administration, misuse of dastaks, loss of autonomy to the king. Fine. So same problems continued. So Mir Qasim, he himself aligned with the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam. At that time, he was a emperor without empire. He had sought refuge with the Nawab Sujauddaulah of Awadh. So, Sujauddaulah, he was the Nawab of Awadh versus British East India Company. It led to what? Battle of Buxar. Battle of Buxar. So, who won in this battle? Yes, it was triple combined army, the Nawab of Bengal plus the Nawab of Awadh plus Mughal Emperor versus East India Company. So, Battle of Buxar. So, British won, and as soon as they won, one treaty was signed, Treaty of Allahabad. When was this battle fought? 1764. This treaty was signed in 1765. Okay. As per the provisions of this treaty, the Nawab of Awadh gave up the districts of Allahabad and Kora to British, and Britishers in turn gave it to Mughal Emperor Shah Alam. They took it from Nawab of Awadh and gave it to Mughal Emperor Shah Alam, and the Mughal Emperor gave Diwani rights to British. Fine. Diwani rights of Bihar, Bengal and Orissa region. Fine. And in return, he was given pension. So, who was the first Mughal emperor to receive pension from Britishers? Shah Alam. And he was given 2 districts by the Britishers, Allahabad and Kora. So, he gave Diwani rights. So, what is Diwani rights? It is the authority to impose and collect the revenue. Authority to impose and collect the revenue. Okay. So, in which region? Bihar, Bengal and Odisha region. Now, Britishers, they were new to this land. They did not know the villages, the languages, the people. They did not have their administrative setup to collect the revenue from all the villages and all the farmers. Therefore, what they did? Now they felt they needed some intermediaries. Some people whom they can trust, some people who can collect the revenue on their behalf, some locals. So, at this point of time, in the year 1765, what they introduced was something called as 5-year settlement. 5-year settlement. And this 5-year settlement has got another name called as quinquennial settlement. Quinquennial settlement. And as per this 5-year settlement, the highest bidder will get the right to collect revenue. And this revenue amount, what they have to pay to Britishers, fixed for 5 years. Fine, fixed for 5 years. Between whom? Bidder and East India Company. It is fixed for 5 years. So, let us say I win the auction. I say for next 5 years I am going to pay you 100 rupees every year as revenue. But now this highest bidder, he will collect the revenue, and there is no upper limit or cap of the amount which he can collect or appropriate from the farmers. He can collect as much as he wants. As long as he pays 100 rupees to Britishers will not interfere. He can collect how much ever he wants. Fine. He can collect 500 rupees from the farmers. It's his wish. Because he's got the right to collect. He is the highest bidder. Every year he has to pay 100 rupees to Britishers. For an example, he has to pay 100 rupees to Britishers. Let's say all of us took part in the bidding. I was the highest bidder. I told from these areas I am going to collect and give you 100 rupees per year. So Britishers told, okay, every year from now onwards for next 5 years, irrespective of there is flood or famine or whatever it is, you have to pay us 100 rupees. I agree. I told, okay, I'll give you 100 rupees. And Britishers told, see, you have to pay us 100 rupees irrespective of whatever conditions. And now, Britishers did not tell me about any upper limit on the revenue that I can collect from the farmers. Understood? So imagine in the village that I got the right to collect the revenue, there are 100 acres of land. In a village that I got the right to collect the revenue, there are 100 acres of land. So I have to pay 100 rupees to Britishers every year. So what is the amount I have to collect? Even if I collect 1 rupee from the farmers, fine. If I collect 1.5 rupees, I will be in the profit of 50 rupees. But is there any end to greed? No. So they started collecting as much as possible. They started exploiting the farmers because there was no upper limit on the amount that I can collect. I have to pay 100 rupees to Britishers, that's all. Apart from that, whatever remains is my profit. So they started extracting as much as possible. This led to severe exploitation of the farmers in the Bengal, Bihar and Orissa region. So this quinquennial system is the root cause of a revolt called as Sannyasi revolt. Fine. So sannyasis, like, they used to collect the donations from the villages. Every year, once or twice, they used to come out of their isolation. You all know sannyasis, they are the spiritual people who stay away from the mainstream society. They are like, usually they used to stay in the hilly region or in the forest region. So every year, once or twice, they used to come out of their hiding or isolation. They used to collect their donations from the people and they used to go back. But after 1765, the farmers were severely suffering consistently. Sannyasis noticed their sufferings and they understood that British East India Company is the reason for their sufferings. Fine. So what they did? They started looting the British factories. This Robin Hood approach, looting the British factories, distributing it to the common people. Fine. And in order to control sannyasis, they are spiritual people. They will visit the temple. So what Britishers did? They introduced restrictions to visit the places of worship. There was something called as Places of Worship Act or regulations. So in order to visit a temple, you have to collect the passes. You have to get the permission or permit from the Britishers to visit the holy places. Imagine, I am going to a temple and Britishers ask me, pass. Where is your pass? Show me your registration. So this registration I have to collect it from my district. Imagine, I am going to Kashi. I am from Bangalore. I walk all the way from Bangalore to Kashi. And now there, they ask me, show me your registration pass. When I asked them where I have to collect it, they told, where are you from? Bangalore. Go and collect it from Bangalore. And they will not allow me to take the darshan of the Lord of Kashi. Fine. That is how it used to work. Will it be fine with you? No. The people revolted. Again, these sannyasis, they kept on resisting the Britishers for around 30 years. They were led by, like, they were secular people. There were sannyasis and fakirs also. So there was Majnu Shah, there is Devi Chowdharani, there was Bhavani Pathak, and based on this sannyasi revolt, a very beautiful novel was written. What is it? Yes, Anand Mat. Anand Mat by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. You all know when it was published. Fine. And that is the source of our national song, Vande Mataram. And Swadeshi movement has got one more name called as Vande Mataram movement. Swadeshi movement, 1905. Yes. Not only in Andhra, the historians also refer to it as Vande Mataram movement in many areas. In Andhra it was popularly known as Vande Mataram movement, but overall also, the entire Swadeshi movement, they also call it as Vande Mataram movement. Okay. So, see, in that movement, one very important thing which you have to notice is, though it started as a response to partition of Bengal, it did not remain merely as the expression of Bengali subnationalism. It did not confine itself to Bengal. It had the seeds of nationalist struggle. Self-reliance. Self-reliance had three elements, I told you, with regard to agriculture, with regard to industries, with regard to education. Did they establish national schools only in Bengal? No. Did they promote establishment of industries only in Bengal? Did they promote establishment of cooperatives only in Bengal? Did they boycott the British goods only in Bengal? No, right? It was all across India. Though it started as a response to partition of Bengal, it was not confined to Bengal. It was a nationalist struggle. Understood? So that was the nature of this movement. Swadeshi movement. Okay? So underlying cause is partition of Bengal, but it is not limited to Bengal. You should know that. Fine. So okay. So Sannyasi revolt, they were secular, sannyasis and fakirs. They wanted to resist this evil system of tax collection introduced in India by the Britishers. No exemption even during flood and famine, no exemption during crop loss, no humanitarian assistance, nothing. It was only based on severe exploitation and extracting as much as possible. Fine. So that led to severe impoverishment and exploitation of the farmers. So this was the problem, and as a response to this problem, Sannyasi revolt started. So they kept on the resistance for almost 3 decades, and later Sannyasi resistance fizzled out because Britishers brought extensive military and all. They combed the forest, the Silli region and all, and sannyasis were like suppressed. So after that, there was something called as Rangpur Dinajpur revolt. Rangpur Dinajpur revolt, 1784, Bengal. Bengal. There, like again, the revenue collectors, they used inhuman methods. They used inhuman methods to collect the revenue. So these inhuman methods were kind of unbearable. They used to confiscate the assets. Fine. There was the confiscation of assets, cattle. The farmers who were unable to pay the revenue, they were dragged out of their homes. Many of them were burnt. Their belongings were burnt. So like that, they used inhuman methods. So the farmers, what they did, under the leadership of a person called as Dirji Narayan, they revolted and they formed parallel government. Parallel government means they collected on their own taxes, they ran their own administration. Fine. So they did that. Okay. But will Britishers spare it? They suppressed that also. They considered it as a revolt by the farmers, and they used extensive military to suppress this revolt. And finally, all this dissatisfaction, the Sannyasi revolt, Rangpur Dinajpur, there were other minor skirmishes also, which convinced Britishers that there is something wrong with the revenue policy. So that is the reason there has been series of unrest or revolts against it. So that is what convinced them. To bring the zamindari system or permanent settlement. Zamindari system or permanent settlement. So there, the upper limit on the revenue that you can collect is fixed. The share between the zamindar and the British East India Company is fixed. The system was hereditary, but conditions apply as long as you pay the revenue in time. Even Zamindar had to pay the revenue in time to the Britishers. It was hereditary as long as you pay the revenue. Fine. So it was not based on the assessment of fertility of the soil and all. So it was fixed. The revenue amount was fixed. So by default, who was the owner of the land? Zamindar. Zamindar was the owner of the land. The farmers were reduced to mere peasants. They were just cultivating on the land, that's all. And they were supposed to pay the revenue. By default, Zamindars became the owner of the land. Fine. So this was the problem with Zamindari system. Again, even during the floods, famines or any event of crop loss, there were no exemptions. There were no exemptions. Okay. So that became the root cause of exploitation of many farmers. Okay. And so you have to know the reason for the reasons or the causes for the peasant revolts. Fine. So one is introduction of land revenue policies, various land revenue policies, Zamindari, Mahalwari, Rayatwari, so all these land revenue policies. And what was the common feature of all these land revenue policies? No exemption, even during extreme events, and they demanded very high rate of revenue. Sometimes it went up to 2/3 of the produce. Fine. And the revenue had to be paid in the form of cash. And to get the cash, you have to depend on the intermediaries like traders, merchants. You have to sell your goods to them, no, in order to get the cash. Okay. And there was no investment in agriculture. Therefore, agriculture remained backward. They did not investment on irrigation, or they did not promote any scientific innovation with regard to the agricultural methods. So nothing was there. Okay. So this land revenue policy was introduced, and it had the following features. And this land revenue policy led to the introduction of intermediaries. It led to the introduction of various classes of intermediaries. So the famous class of intermediaries like revenue collectors, and these revenue collectors had different names: zamindars, talukdars, jotedars. Fine. Revenue collectors. And to get the cash, you have to depend on traders and merchants. Fine. And in order to pay the revenue, even during the crop loss, you have to depend on money lenders. Fine. You have to depend on them. You have to go borrow the money from them, pay to the Britishers. So it led to the introduction of various class of intermediaries. And all these intermediaries, what did they do? There was severe exploitation. Fine. So this exploitation led to landlessness and impoverishment of farmers. They snatched away our lands, they snatched away our hereditary titles. There was severe exploitation. And not only that, they forced the farmers to work as Begar, forced labor was there. So if you have to stay safe, you have to work in Zamindar's land for free. Fine. And if you are unable to pay the loan that you borrowed from the money lender, they also forced you to become the bonded labor. If you are unable to pay the money that you borrowed, you are forced to become the bonded labor. Not only you, your entire generation is going to serve that family. Fine. So this kind of system was introduced. And overall, there was transformation of agriculture. Overall, there was a transformation of agriculture. So what kind of transformation was seen? First thing.
Types of crops.
Yes. Commercialization of agriculture. So introduction of commercial crops. Fine. So why it was done? Not mainly because of profit. To supply raw material to British industries. This was the main purpose, no? So cotton, indigo, jute. So it was all promoted with the intent of supplying the raw material to British industries. So our farmers became dependent on British industries. Okay? So this is one thing. And then there was something called as fragmentation of land holdings. Fragmentation of land holdings. Okay, and there was overcrowding of agriculture. Why? Because industries got closed down. Our kings came under the control of Britishers. So all those who are working as soldiers, under our kings, they lost their means of employment. Our industries got closed down because they could not compete with the cheap machine-made goods of British industries. So when our industries got closed down, all the people who were dependent on industry shifted over to agriculture. When our kings lost their autonomy and came under the control of Britishers, Anglo-Mysore wars, Anglo-Maratha wars, most of our kings lost their autonomy. They came under the control of Britishers. And the soldiers working under our kings, what they used to do? They lost their means of livelihood. They had to shift into agriculture, leading to overcrowding or over-dependence on agriculture. Understood? This over-dependence or overcrowding of agriculture indeed contributed to fragmentation of land holdings. So the per capita size, per capita land holding, it came down very much. Even today we have one of the lowest per capita in the entire world among the big countries. Fine. And overcrowding, even today you know more than 50% of our population dependent on agriculture, directly or indirectly, more than 50%. But when you go to developed countries, this ratio is 10 to 15%. Fine. Even less than that. But in India, why this phenomenon started? Like whatever problem we are being like crippled with, it all started during the British era. Okay. And then anything else? Anything else? See, exploitation in the form of imposing additional cess. Imposing additional cess. Additional revenue. See, let's say government says every farmer has to pay 50% of the produce, but Zamindar will collect 60%. Zamindar will collect 60%, 10% for himself. And there was one more thing called as forced cultivation. They will decide which crop you should cultivate. For example, Teen Katiya system. Fine. Forced cultivation. And this introduced the European planters. The commercialization introduced the European planters, and they promoted the practice of forced cultivation for their own profits. Okay. And our farmers were exposed to international events or to the phenomenon of globalization. How? I'll prove you with examples. Our farmers were affected by the globalization because our agriculture started depending on British industries. Fine. Our economy was globalized. Okay. So all these things were the causes of peasant revolts. All these things were the causes of peasant revolts. Okay. If you know this clearly, any peasant revolt, starting from 1770 till 1947, will have the reason from these things. These are the reasons. There cannot be anything else apart from this. Fine. This is a summary of all the reasons, and we have understood it in a very organic way. First thing, they introduced the land revenue policy, initially quinquennial system, later zamindari, rayatwari, mahalwari, etc. So, who introduced? Factual things you should know. Okay. And then this land revenue policy led to the introduction of intermediaries like revenue collectors. Fine. And as per the land revenue policy, you are supposed to pay the cash, and for cash you are supposed to depend on traders and merchants for cash. Fine. So earlier there was barter system. You could pay the tax in kind, not needed for you to pay in cash only, but Britishers made it compulsory to pay it in cash. For that you have to depend on these people. And whenever there was flood or famine or extreme crop loss, king used to provide the exemption, but Britishers, they did not give us any exemptions. So when there was severe crop loss, when you could not afford to pay the revenue, you had to go get the money from money lender for very high interest rate, and you have to pay the revenue. So that made you dependent on money lenders as well. So these were the features of all the land revenue policies, common features: severe exploitation, very high rate of rent, demanded in form of cash, introduction of intermediaries, and then no exemption even during the extreme circumstances. And now Britishers, in order to suit their requirements of their industries, they introduced a lot of things that led to the transformation of Indian agriculture. One is commercialization. So because of commercialization, we started producing more and more commercial crops, and because of overproduction of commercial crops, at times whenever there was famine, there was severe loss of life in India. For example, the famine of 1870s, famine of 1899, 1900, famine of 1945-46. So in all these famines, lakhs of Indian people passed away, mainly because we did not have sufficient buffer of food grains. Why we did not have sufficient buffer of food grains? Because we were forced to cultivate the commercial crops in place of food crops. So this led to intensifying the effects of famine. During the famine, no buffer stock. Because of no buffer stock, people used to die. Understood? That was the question. 2022 means British policies, how it intensified the famine. Understood? So this is the problem. Fine. So we shifted our land from the cultivation of food crops to commercial crops. Okay. So all these things are the reasons. Now we will go through, like we already understood two important things, Sannyasi revolt and Ranpur Dinaspur revolt. Next we will go to the indigo revolt. It is also known as Neel Bidroho. Indigo means Neel. Who are the leaders? Vishnu and Digambar Bishwas. Fine. So again, here the indigo planters, they were exploiting the farmers. Okay. So forced cultivation, lack of remunerative prices, affecting the fertility of the soil, exploitation of the farmers, all these things were present. Okay. So here again, the exploitation by planters, low prices, affecting the fertility of the soil, forced cultivation. So all these things, led the farmers to revolt under the leadership of Vishnu and Digambar Bishwas. Okay. So it led them to revolt. And Indigo Commission was set up in 1860. So to know the reason for the revolt and to solve it. But again, the measures taken that was, it was very ineffective, or it did not address the concerns of the farmers. Okay. Fine. Because the problems of indigo farmers continued. Even in 1920 you can see anti-indigo movement in Bengal led by Someshwar Prasad. Fine. The problems continued, it persisted. So it was there. But a nationalistic work, Neel Darpan, based on indigo revolt. Deen Bandhu Mitra, 1861. Okay. And next is Deccan Revolt, 1870s. Deccan Revolt. See again, as I told you, this was the outcome of globalization of Indian agriculture. Fine. What happened? See, both India and USA, they were the suppliers of cotton to British industries. In USA there was American Civil War in 1860s. So because of American Civil War, the supply of cotton got disrupted. So there was severe demand for Indian cotton. Severe demand for Indian cotton. Fine. So demand for Indian cotton increased. So when demand increases, prices increase, and when prices increases, it increases the profit of the farmers. Fine. So when the profit of the farmers increase, more and more farmers start cultivating cotton. So it increased cotton cultivation in India. But by this time there was end of American Civil War and supply of cotton from USA to England resumed. So what happened? There is more supply and less demand. What happens to the prices? Prices will decrease. And when prices decrease, loss to the farmers. But even when there is loss, crop loss, revenue loss, whatever, you have to pay the revenue in time. But farmers don't have money. So what they did? They went to money lenders. And money lenders, they snatched away their lands, leading to landlessness. Leading to landlessness of farmers. Fine. And at the same point of time, the farmers, they became very angered against these money lenders. So what they started was social boycott. They started social boycott of money lenders. They stopped offering any service to the money lenders. They stopped talking to them. Fine. Nobody cooperated with them. Nobody helped them. So this started. But money lenders have money. And money can buy anything. So they continued to sustain. So farmers became restless that their protest or that their social boycott was not working. So what they did, they attacked the houses of the money lenders and burned down the ledgers, money ledgers or that agreement copies, all whatever proof that existed for them to prove that they borrowed the money, it was all burned down. So there were attacks on money lenders, and these money lenders, they are people with money, they are influential, they are connected to British, they can get the police for their protection. So this is what led to the suppression of the farmers by the police forces again in the Deccan region, Pune, Ahmedabad, this region. And what happened was, Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act was passed. Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act was passed. Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act was passed. Okay. And this act, it told like money lenders should return the lands and all, but will they return? Obviously. Again, these kind of reforms were ineffective. And one very important thing was Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. Pune Sarvajanik Sabha and its members supported the cause of the farmers, like Madhav Govind Ranade, Vishnu Shastri Chiplankar. They all wrote articles in their respective newspapers in support of farmers of the Deccan region. So, nationalist leaders started supporting the cause of farmers. Fine. Understood? So, next thing is Pabna revolt. Okay. So UPSC can ask you what is Nazrana, they can ask you what is Dastak. Fine. So it is a additional revenue or excessive revenue collected by the zamindars or the revenue collectors in the Bengal region. This led to what? If this is the fixed revenue, over and above they used to collect this, and it will lead to exploitation of farmers. This led to severe exploitation of farmers. Okay. And our farmers, they started questioning this. But do you think the zamindars would relent? Not at all. So what they did? For the first time, farmers, they went through legal and judicial means to redress their problems. They formed something called as Pabna Agrarian League. They formed something called as Pabna Agrarian League, and they went through legal and judicial means, and court ruled in favor of whom? Farmers. So here also the nationalists supported the cause of farmers. Fine. Here also the nationalists supported the cause of farmers. Whereas Amrit Bazar Patrika, they criticized this movement. Amrit Bazar Patrika criticized this movement. There was a leader called as Shambhu Mitra, Paul. Okay. Fine. Now this Pabna for this year, I think this is important, and also Deccan Revolt, because 150 years, almost 150 years, and these kind of anniversaries UPSC pays a lot of attention. Fine. I told you, no, Shambhu. Deccan Revolt, no definite leader. That was spread in different villages. Farmers themselves, they decided there was no definite leader for that. Was very prominent and all. Okay. So if something happens over a very large geographical area, especially in 1860s, 70s and all, if it is like one district or one village, there can be a leader. Here, every village there was a leader. Fine. So that was the thing. So now, the next important thing is Champaran Kheda, which you already know. Champaran Teen Katya system. Again, forced cultivation of indigo. Why they were forcing now? Because of scientific inventions of chemical dyes that acted as alternative to indigo. So there was decline in the demand for indigo. Okay. So farmers were reluctant, but these people, they needed it for the industries to continue to run. For them, made it compulsory. And then there was Kheda. Fine. The revenue law itself told, in any event, if the production in a particular year is less than 1/4 of average production, the farmer should be given remission or exemption. But instead of giving the exemption, Britishers increased the revenue by 20 to 23%. So that led to Kheda movement and led by Sardar Patel, Gandhi, etc. So ultimately what happened? The government told, for the current year, only those who could afford to pay can pay the revenue, and from the coming year, the increased revenue of 6% is applicable. So Kheda also solved. And then Bardoli, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, again there also there was kind of no tax movement. So they told, we are not going to pay any tax, and Sardar Patel was the leader. It was the women of Bardoli who gave him the title Sardar, and there was a committee called as Brooksfield Committee that was set up after Bardoli revolt. Brooksfield Committee, no doubt. Brooksfield, BROOKS, field. Brooksfield Committee, okay. So, this can be matched the following. So, 1920s numerous committees were set up, as I told you, like Muddyman Committee, Lee Committee, Butler Committee, fine. So, and I forgot to tell you about another important committee, Lothian Committee, no doubt. You want to remember this, write on. What did Southborough Committee do? Franchisee electoral provisions of the Act of 1919 were determined by Southborough Committee. Electoral provisions. Write down, Southborough Committee. Write it again, no issues. Write it again. Electoral provisions of the Government of India Act 1919 or electoral provisions of Montagu-Chelmsford reforms were determined by Southborough Committee 1917. Southborough Committee 1917. Similarly, the electoral provisions of Government of India Act 1935 were determined by Lothian Committee. Spelling is on the board. Similarly, the electoral provisions of the Government of India Act 1935 were determined by Lothian Committee. Understood? So, if they ask which of the following committees are related to electoral provisions in India, Southborough and Lothian, both of them are related to electoral provisions in India. Fine. Act of 1919, Southborough. Act of 1935, Lothian. Okay. These are like very less known facts which you won't find in the common books and all. So, you have to be aware of this, because nowadays they are asking, what they are asking is, first thing they are asking very simple questions. So, when did the Governor of Bengal become Governor of India? Montagu-Chelmsford reforms refers to constitutional developments. Anti-Semitic agitation happened because of what? Who are the persons associated with INA? Who are the persons associated with Ghadar movement? These kind of simple questions they are asking. This is the first category of questions. So, whether you read spectrum or not, you will be able to answer this with basic. Just by attending the classes, you will be able to answer these kind of questions. You need not go through the extravagant studies or in-depth research and all to answer these questions. Just the basic knowledge of the subject will help you to answer these kind of questions. There is second set of questions. Mutually exclusive from any mainstream material or sources. Not found in spectrum, not found in any test series, not found anywhere. Fine. So, this kind of content, whatever I gave you, Southborough, Lothian, Carlisle Circular, fine, these kind of things belong to that category, which is not found in any mainstream material. So, it is up to you to protect it, revise it and go to examination. So, there the question can be asked or might not be asked, but knowing things will give you confidence. Knowing things will give you confidence. See, out of all these things, what we expect is, like from 5 days of my class, I cannot say that you will be able to answer all the questions from modern Indian history. Fine. I expect you to get at least 1 or 2 more questions, 1 or 2 more right answers with respect to other aspirants, vis-a-vis other aspirants who have not attended the classes. So, 1 or 2 questions how can I claim? Through these kind of things, the less known things, the organic analysis, the kind of thematic things I gave you, the constitutional developments or the developments in 1940s, the educational committees, the various acts. So, these things will give you more clarity and will help you to get 1 or 2 more right answers when compared to the other aspirants. Fine. So it will be foolishness to claim that everything came from my class and all, because I am not the father of this subject. Modern history did not originate because of me. So whatever is there, I am trying to collect from the different sources, the less known things, all those things. I have to do my own digging, and then I am coming up with things in a very simplified and organic format, so that you can remember it and reproduce it in the examination. So it's up to you to revise it multiple times and then go to the examination hall. If you just attend the classes and go to examination hall, that's the most dangerous thing which you can do, because you will be familiar with everything, not sure about anything. Jack of all, master of none, most dangerous state. Fine. In every question you will be able to go up to 50-50, but definite answer, not possible. Without revisions, without clarity, definite answer will not be able to arrive at. So that is going to be the most dangerous thing. So avoid that. Give revisions, at least 5 to 6 revisions. So you can do revise on day-to-day basis. So at the end of the day, last 30 minutes of your day before going to sleep and all, so I used to have a small pocket diary. I used to list down the topics, whatever I studied from the morning. Fine. So my approach was, I used to study only one subject per day. So I never used to study 2 or 3 different subjects every day. One subject, I used to give my 100% to it. Fine. Some people, they have 3 subjects and all. 3 subjects is not very good. 1 or 2 will be fine. If you feel that one subject towards the end of the day, the progress is getting leaner, or if you are not able to focus much, you feel saturated and you are not able to make any progress after evening and all, then you can go to the second subject. But 3 subjects a day, 4 subjects a day, not advisable in this stage. 1 or 2 is fine. Fine. So I used to give most of my time to one subject. At the end of the day, I used to list down the topics, just indexes, list of the topics. I used to recall before going to sleep. That's all. So active recalling will help you to sharpen your recalling abilities and retention abilities. In exam, what matters? Recalling. Whether if you are able to recall whatever you learnt in those 2 hours or not. Fine. With minimum latency, there should not be any delay in you thinking and recalling. Understood? If you think for 5 minutes and you are able to recall means, so one question you cannot afford to spend 5 minutes. Understood? So there should be minimum latency, means recalling time should be very short. It should be in seconds. So how to ensure minimum latency or minimum recalling time? Multiple revisions. In exam, will you be able to have the material and recall? No. You have to recall it mentally. So do that exercise every day. Understood? Do that exercise every day. Sharpen your recalling abilities. See, do whatever it takes for you to clear the examination. Whatever you can do in examination, you should be doing only that. Fine. Whatever that can help you to perform better, you should be doing that. Fine. So plan for those 2 hours. Fine. What to do in those 2 hours? What are the limitations? Try to live with that limitations. Fine. How to maximize your performance for those 2 hours? Work on those aspects. Fine. So if you don't know where you are going wrong, then you can never correct it. You live with that mistakes for numerous attempts. You will live with that mistakes. You do all the hard work, but ultimately you will not be getting the positive results because you carry those mistakes in you. So self-analysis is the root for the progress. Fine. So if you cannot correct yourself, you cannot correct the district administration or you cannot implement the reforms in any department or something. Okay. When will you be back in Bangalore? Probably next Tuesday or Thursday. Fine. Lot of things pending over there also. You were told that some other subject would begin, no? As per the schedule, what was the subject that was supposed to start now? Agriculture. After that? Geography. After geography, mine was supposed to start. So, sudden shuffling happened to leave things there and come over here. Okay, and no issues. So,
For us it is the last subject.
Which one?
Desi or for batch 1.
You belong to APEC batch 1? Okay.
For us it is the last subject. After that,
Yes, gentlemen, I know. Like only my subject was pending for you people. Because I had undergone a surgery. Fine. I could not speak properly for a month. So due to my health issues, I was unable to come and take up classes for you. So that's the reason the administration told like we'll combine batch 1 and batch 2 of APEC for your subject. You can take care. Fine. So apologies from my end.
no sir.
Fine.
So other batches were also combined like art and culture and ancient and medieval.
Okay. I don't know about that, but mine, probably there might have been some gap between the completion of other subjects and mine. So, no, gentlemen, like not only mine, but we should ensure the timely completion of things so that you can take care of your own study plan and all. Okay. So the next thing after this is the Kisan Sabha movement. Kisan Sabha movement. Starting from 1918. So what does that indicate? Spread of socialism. Kisan Sabha movement, spread of socialism. Awareness about the exploitation. Fine. Awareness about the exploitation. Fine. So, the leaders N.G. Ranga, Swami Sahajananda Saraswati, Fine. So, Awadh Kisan Sabha was one of the earliest, followed by UP Kisan Sabha, and in 1920s All India Kisan Sabha was formed. Fine. Awadh was the earliest. Awadh Kisan Sabha. Following UP, Bihar, like later every province got their own Kisan Sabhas. Okay. Fine. And there was something called as All India States People's Conference, 1927. 26 or 27. All India States People's Conference. Fine. See, I have to clarify this. See, INC did not, write down, INC did not involve or directly support the freedom movement, in the princely states. Freedom movement in the princely states. And it was clearly highlighted. By Jawaharlal Nehru in 1936 that the princely states have the right of self determination, but INC would not involve in their freedom movement. INC would not involve in their freedom movement. Fine. So they will not involve. Okay. Sorry? Nothing. Okay.
Indirectly, sir, they have supported now through this all Kisan Sabha and all.
Indirectly it will be there, man, but what I am telling, whatever they told, I am telling you. We are not talking about the analysis part of it. I just told whatever they told. Fine. Indirectly it will be there. See, no national school told we will give only nationalistic education. Fine. Indirectly it will be there. So, okay. So the next thing, like it is about Tebaga movement. Tebaga movement. Tebaga movement, 1945-46, Bengal. 1945-46, Bengal. Again, demanding the implementation of Flood Committee recommendations. Demanding the implementation of Flood Committee recommendations. Okay. So what did Flood Committee say? 2/3 to sharecroppers, or what was the Bengali name? Bargardars. 2/3 to Bargardars and 1/3 to Jotedars, or the landowners. 2/3 to Bargardars, 1/3 to Jotedars, landowners. Okay. So they demanded the implementation of this Flood Committee reforms. Okay. And lastly, Telangana movement. Fine. So there, exploitation by the revenue officials, exploitation, forced cultivation, coupled with national movement, there was something called as Hindu-Muslim communal events. Right. So Hindu peasants or Hindu farmers were targeted, fine, by the officials of Nizam. There was a private army of Nizam called as Razakars. They targeted them. Fine. So all these things led to Telangana movement, and the thing is, it coincided with independence. Okay. So here, like INC, Muslim League, sorry, not Muslim League, INC, Hindu Mahasabha, Communist Party of India, they were all involved. Fine. INC, it was involved because Nizam wanted independent state. They had to create awareness and keep the people together. Hindu Mahasabha was involved because Hindu peasants and farmers were being targeted, and CPA was involved because it was the issue of peasants. Okay, and they were all fighting against Razakars and Nizam. Nizam and this Razakars, sorry. Fine. So it was a very big movement. Okay. So this is all about the peasant movements which I wanted to discuss. Now let us move on to the tribal movements. See, for tribal movements also, or the tribal revolts also, the causes remains more or less the same. Because in tribal areas also, in forest areas also, they introduce something called as land revenue policies, and land revenue policies will demand the same set of things. revenue in the form of cash, no exemption even during extreme events, fine. And in wherever land revenue policy went, there went commercialization, the intermediaries were introduced, all these things are there. But there are certain things which are exclusive to the tribal areas. I will discuss with regard to that. All these things are very common to both peasant revolts and also the tribal revolts. So now let me tell you some things that are exclusive to the tribal revolts. The causes of tribal revolts. Okay. So here, along with land revenue policies, they also introduced forest laws. And these forest laws led to the introduction of forest officials. Fine. And as per these forest laws, there were numerous restrictions that were introduced. First thing, ban on shifting cultivation, jumming, podu. There was something called as podu. So you can hear this in Rampa revolt. Fine. It has different names. The practice of shifting cultivation, slash and burn, a lot of things. It was banned. And then the system of collective ownership of land. Was destroyed. Fine. Collective ownership of land was destroyed. So the egalitarian setup the tribals lived under, it was basically destroyed by the Britishers. And then there was restrictions on access to minor forest produce. There was restriction on access to minor forest produce. Okay. So you are not supposed to even collect the honey, the fallen off leaves, trees. You cannot even hunt the small animals. Lot of restrictions were introduced. Fine. So as a result of what? The forest laws. And here the forest officials, again it leads to exploitation, because see, these forest laws are restricting the traditional rights of tribes, restricting the traditional rights of tribes. Through whom? Forest officials. They are also the kind of intermediaries. Fine. So if you hunt the small animals, if you even collect the honey, if you collect the fallen off dry leaves, what the forest officials would do to you? Exploit you. And tribals, if you do not follow the orders of the Britishers, they would declare you as criminal tribes. They would hunt you for life. Criminal tribes. And they were sent to different parts of the world as indentured laborers. They were transformed into indentured laborers. You get the payment once in a life, that's all. You have to go, settle down, work there throughout your life. You will be paid only once. So Indians working in the rubber plantations of Malaysia, Indians working in the Caribbean islands, so they were all taken as indentured laborers. So who fought against the system of indentured laborers? Madan Mohan Malviya. And he was assisted by Gandhi to some extent. So indentured labor system, Madan Mohan Malviya. He was the one who strongly raised the voice against the indentured labor system, and in 1900s this system was banned. Fine. So especially I think in 1917 or 18 this was banned. In the second decade of 20th century it was banned. Fine. Mainly due to the efforts of Madan Mohan Malviya. Okay. So, and there was transformation of forest. Again, commercialization of forest, so that whatever woods or the forest resources we had, so they started using it to fulfill their commercial commitments, like building the railway embankments, building the railway bogies, so shipbuilding, and also to build the Birmingham Palace. They took our wood only. The teak wood of Western Ghats was the main wood which was used to build their Birmingham Palace. Fine, you can claim it. Fine, so obviously, fine. Commercialization of forest resources, and then they started unregulated practice of trophy hunting. Unregulated practice of trophy hunting, and then erosion of isolation of tribals. Erosion of isolation of tribals, and then there was forced religious conversions. There was forced religious conversions, and there was interference in tribal practices. Animal sacrifice, human sacrifice, lot of like traditions they had, and British started interfering in it. Fine. Okay. So all these things were the main reasons for the tribal revolts. Fine. So you can find, like, when you go through all the tribal revolts, the reasons will be, one among them, one or two among them. Okay. So you look at Santal revolt, 1855-1856, Santal revolt. So what is the reason? Again, ban on shifting cultivation, destruction of system of the collective ownership. Fine. And then exploitation by forest officials, and also the intermediaries like zamindars, moneylenders, traders, merchants. They started cheating the tribals. See, tribals are more innocent, more illiterate when compared to the regular farmers. So the extent to which you can cheat them is like very much. So they were very much exploited, and when they could not tolerate it anymore, under the leadership of whom? Santals, Sidhu and Kanu brothers, they revolted. Fine. So for them, they classified all the outsiders as what? Dicus. All outsiders. They classified as Dicus. These revenue officials, money lenders, zamindars, traders and merchants, they classified all of them as Dicus and they revolted against them. Fine. Under the leadership of Sidhu and Kanu brothers, the district of Santal Paraganas were created to pacify the tribals.
Sir, but was the primary reason for the tribal revolts? Is it because of money lenders?
See, gentlemen, here the main reason is the restrictions imposed on the traditional life of tribals and the entry of outsiders. Fine. The restrictions happen only when there is entry of outsiders. Understood?
Just destruction of their tribal life.
Yes. So what is the tribal life? What does the tribal life include? The shifting cultivation, collective ownership, access to minor forest produce. All these things were restricted by the outsiders. They started exploiting them. There was landlessness. Fine. Tribals became landless in their own tribal region. Fine. So because of all these things.
They were also cutting down forests to expand the agricultural land.
Shifting cultivation.
So that made them shift more inside and toward.
See, there is a imagine this is a tribal village. Just imagine. So as per the tribal practice, Juming, what they do? They divide the entire tribal village into 3 or 4 parts. 3 or 4 parts. It can be more than that also. So what they do? They clear the forest in this area. They cultivate the crops. Fine. At the end of the cropping season, what they do? They destroy this, shift over to next land. Fine. Similarly, they clear the forest here, cultivate the crops, shift over to next land. It happens. Okay. And now what happened? See, imagine I introduced land revenue policy here. Let's assume the entire tribal land is 1000 acres. All these things together 1000 acres. At any point of time, I am cultivating how many? 250 acres. I am cultivating only 250 acres. So I will be paying the revenue for 250 acres. But what is the amount of land there? 1000 acres. Understood? So if you look from the British point of view, area which has the potential to fetch you 1000 rupees, into 4, you are just getting 250 rupees. Understood? So therefore, they banned this system. Now they wanted to bring the entire India under cultivation at one time. Understood? And similarly, listen, the entire tribe, they collectively own this land. There was no individual ownership, like this land belongs to you, this land belongs to B, this land belongs to C. Understood? It was collectively owned. And if they don't pay the revenue, the entire village will have to be punished. You cannot pinpoint any individual. Fine? In this system of collective ownership, there will be unity. You cannot pinpoint any individual. They will be together. They will be united. There will be brotherhood. You cannot tackle such people. But if there is individual ownership, I can pinpoint. I can exploit. I can extract. Therefore, they destroyed the system of collective ownership to promote individual ownerships. Why individual ownership? That will prevent you basically from remaining united. I can affix the accountability. You did not pay it. If there is collective ownership, I can't do that. And I cannot suppress the entire village. It might revolt. So I cannot take many chances in that scenario. So that is the reason. Okay. So whatever Britishers did, it is through meticulous thinking and calculation to maximize their own gains. Okay. So this is the case. So after that, you all know there was a revolt by the tribals of Ramosi, 1870s, under the leadership of Vasudev Balwant Phadke. Vasudev Balwant Phadke. So he was a clerk in British East India Company, and he was a disciple of Mahadev Govind Ranade, used to attend his lectures and all. Fine. So he wanted to organize an armed revolt against the Britishers. Fine. Therefore, he tried organizing it with the help of Ramosi tribals, but their might and strength was not enough to counter the mighty British Empire. He was arrested. He was sent to Gulf of Aden. ADEN. Until 1935, Gulf of Aden was part of India only. British Indian Empire. Till 1935, Gulf of Aden was the part of British Indian Empire. In 1935, it was separated. It was separated. Just like we gave independence, the separation of Burma, no? Gulf of Aden was also separated from India. He was sent to Gulf of Aden. He was imprisoned there. He escaped there also. Vasudev Balwant Phadke escaped from the imprisonment. But where will he go? In the unknown land, surrounded by ocean. Where will he go? So he was arrested again and he died over there. Vasudev Balwant Phadke. Okay. So this is the case. And then you all know about Munda revolt. So Mundas, again, destruction of the traditional way of life, forced religious conversions, fine, the exploitation by the outsiders, the primary reasons, forced religious conversions, destruction of traditional way of life, and the exploitation by the outsiders. So what they did? They gave a call for Ulgulan. Ulgulan means religious war. Again PYQ. Ulgulan against the outsiders. Ulgulan means religious war. Under the leadership of whom? Birsa Munda. Under the leadership of Birsa Munda. Fine. In 1920, coinciding with NCM, there was Rampa revolt in Andhra region. 1920, Rampa revolt, Andhra region. Fine. Fine. Led by Alluri Sitarama Raju. Alluri Sitarama Raju. Against the main reason, the ban on Podu. Podu means, as I told you, shifting cultivation, and one of the main reason was restriction on access to minor forest produce. Minor forest produce. See, there was something called as tendu leaf. Fine. So this leaf is used to make beedis. So there was restriction on even collecting that. The tribals used to make their livelihood by collecting that. The Britishers imposed restriction on even collecting the tendu leaves. Fine. So because of all these things, there was revolt, and there was something called as, write down. So just like in Hindi you call it as Begar, there is one more name for the forced labor, it is called as Veti. In Telangana movement, this was also one of the reasons, Veti, V-E-T-H-I, it means forced labor. Veti means forced labor. Okay. Fine. So these are broadly, what do you call us, the tribal movements. Fine. So there are a lot of things that happened before and after independence. Before 1857 and after 1857. So you can adopt the map approach to know what all happened where and all. So map approach is better suited to remember all of them. Okay. And this time I am expecting one question about the tribal revolts of Northeast. Ahom revolt, Garo, Kasi, Jaitya uprisings. So pay special emphasis to that. It is given in the handouts. Ahom, Garo, Kasi, Jaitya. So because Ahom revolt, I think it happened in 1825, almost like 200 years for that revolt. Okay. Ahom revolt under the leadership of Gomdar Kanwar. (1826 or 1828). There was Kasi revolt under the leadership of Tirath Singh. Kasi under the leadership of Tirath Singh. Pagalpanthi 1825, almost 200 years. Pagalpanthi. It was in North Bengal under the leadership of Karam Shah and Tipu. Karam Shah was the main leader. Later Tipu took over. Pagalpanthis. Again, it had a peasant element in it. It was mainly against the exploitation of peasants. So Pagalpanthis were the semi-religious sect. They were focusing on their religion or their traditions, customs, etc. But they were pained due to the exploitation of peasants by the zamindars and the introduction of these land revenue policies and all. Therefore, what they did? They protested against the Britishers. So it happened in a region called as Sherpur, like in a place called as Sherpur. Fine. Sherpur in Bengal. Okay. 1825. It happened in 1825. So this Pagalpanthis was like kind of started by Karam Shah. Later Tipu. He revolted against the Britishers. He assumed the royal powers and declared himself as king of Sherpur in 1825. So that was the peak of this revolt. And you know, as usual, later Britishers will take care of all these things, and they have the way to deal with these things. Okay. So now with regard to socio-religious reform movements. Socio-religious reform movements. Fine. See, I expect you to read the handouts on socialist reform movements. It is in the tabular form. So, which was the organization, against what all they fought against, and who was the founder, what was their contribution, the school setup, all those things, it is there. But there are certain things which I have purposefully not mentioned in the handouts. Fine. So, write those things down. I will dictate them, just write it down. Remember these things. And these are like collection of facts. You have to just remember them, revise them multiple times and remember them. So who introduced indigo plantation in India? Write down. Indigo plantation in India was introduced by a French man, Louis Bonnard. Indigo plantation was introduced in India by a Frenchman called as Louis Bonnard. In Bengal, in 1777, 1777, in 1777. Yes. 1777, 1777, same no. So I told. Write down Vittal Ramji Shinde. Vittal Ramji Shinde. Founder of Depressed Classes Mission, 1906. Fine. And Asprushata Nivarana Parishad, 1912. Asprushata Nivaran Parishad. Yes. Asprushata means untouchability. Nivaran means eradication. Parishad means group or association. Asprushata Nivaran Parishad, 1912, 1912. And he wrote the book Bharatiya Asprushata Prashna. Bharatiya Asprushata Prashna. Okay. And he sought, next point, he sought special representation to depressed classes before Southborough Committee. Before Southborough Committee. Okay. Fine. And then write down N.M. Joshi, Narayan Malhar Joshi. N.M. Joshi, Narayan Malhar Joshi. Established Social Service League in 1911. For promoting relief and welfare to the masses. Associated with All India Trade Union Congress. Associated with All India Trade Union Congress. Okay. Write it down. In Punjab region, Muzaras means tenants or sharecroppers. In Bengal, Bargardars. In Bengal it was called as Bargardars. But in Punjab region, okay, in Bengal they were called as Jotedars. Understood? Okay, and there was something called as Buckast movement. Buckast movement, 1937 to 39, and also it re-emerged in 1940s. Against the forced eviction of tenants by landlords. Against the forced eviction of tenants by landlords. There was something called as Hath Tola movement in Bengal. Hath Tola movement in Bengal against the landlords, collecting levy from peasants in weekly market. Levy means tax. Okay. Next one, Gopal Baba Walankar. Write down the name. Gopal Baba Walankar. PYQ. Gopal Baba Walankar. W-A-L-A-N-G. Walankar. So, he was the secretary of All India Depressed Classes Conference 1920. Secretary of All India Depressed Classes Conference. (1920). Wrote the books Nirashrit Hind Nagarik. Not only Vittal Vidwamsak, he wrote the book Nirashrit Hind Nagarik. Nirashrit means refugee. Nirashrit Hind Nagarik. And then Choka Mela. Choka Mela, Nirashrit Hind Nagarik, and then Choka Mela. Fine. Next point, did not advocate or support conversions out of Hinduism. Conversions out of Hinduism. Okay. Next one, right on, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Fine. Established Depressed Classes Federation 1930. Depressed Classes Federation 1930. See, Depressed Classes Mission and Depressed Classes Federation, they are different. Depressed Classes Mission established by Vittal Ramji Shinde, Depressed Classes Federation established by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Fine. Independent Labour Party 1936. Ambedkar established. Independent Labour Party, 1936. Scheduled Caste Federation, 1942. Scheduled Caste Federation, 1942. Republican Party of India, post-independence. Republican Party of India, post-independence. Fine. And in 1920, he wrote a book called as Mooka Nayaka. 1920, he wrote a book called as Mook Nayak. 1924, Bahishkrit Hitakarini Sabha. He established Bahishkrit Hitakarini Sabha, 1924. Bahishkrit Hitakarini Sabha. Fine. He also established Bharatiya Buddha Mahasabha. Bharatiya Buddha Mahasabha. Fine. And there is a book called as, write down, Gandhi and Lenin. Gandhi and Lenin. And another book called as The Socialist. Gandhi and Lenin. And another book called as Socialist. Both of them written by S.A. Dange. S.A. Dange. So he was a very famous communist leader. So he wrote that. Okay. Fine. See, and there is one term. Go back to the tribal causes. The collective land ownership, the system, it has also got another name called as Kuntkatti. The collective land ownership by the tribals. It is defined by a term called as Kuntkatti. So UPSC can ask you, the term Kuntkatti refers to what? Fine. So that can be asked. And then Genmes. See, these terms are important. It can be asked. So the beauty of these terms is, if you know it, 2 marks straight away. If you don't know it, gone. You cannot deduce the answer there. Fill in the blanks kind of questions. And nowadays, you know, like there are like 26, 28 questions that are based on fill in the blanks type. So it is straight hit questions. Either you know it or you don't know it. That's all. So to answer them, you need to have some factual knowledge, and that is what I am trying to provide you, because the meaning of the terms, whether it is the ancient times or the medieval times or the modern times, UPS has been asking it consistently. Like they asked about Dikus, they asked about Ulgulan. Fine. There are a lot of things which are pending now, and I am touching upon that. Okay. So Genmes. The Hindu landlords. of Malabar region, were defined as Janmis by Mopla, during the Mopla revolt, 1920, 1920. 1920, 21, 22. Fine. Who was the leader of the movement? V.K. Haji. V.K. Haji. Fine. Again, Gandhi visited Mopla region. Fine. He thought it is a peasant movement, but later got to know it had the communal angle very much. So he distanced himself. Okay. So this is one thing. And then you know about SNDP movement, no? Sri Narayana Guru, Dharma Paripalana Sabha. It is against temple entry and mainly against the practice of untouchability and temple entry. Started by Sri Narayana Guru. It influenced the entire South Indian landscape at that time. Fine. So, influenced by this, there was something called as self-respect movement in Madras province, led by Periyar. Fine. His original name was E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. What is self-respect movement? Very simple. Marriage or any social ceremonies without any priest. Marriage or any social ceremony without any priest. So, no Brahminical dominance of the society. Fine. And there are many things associated with SNDP movement. One was Vaikom Satyagraha, again in 1920s only. Vaikom Satyagraha, and the persons associated with this, you already know one very important person, K. Kedappan, also known as Gandhi of Kerala, the leader of salt satyagraha in the Malabar region. And there was K.P. Keshava, and this Vaikom Satyagraha was mainly based on temple entry for untouchables. Vaikom Satyagraha, demanding the temple entry for untouchables. Okay. And then there was something called as Aravipuram movement, where they established a Shiva temple. Without priest. Fine. Established a Shiva temple without priest. And on the walls of the temple, they had written, beyond these dividing walls, there is only one God, one religion, one mankind. So, symbol of, the message of unity, unity of mankind was written there. Okay. And again, these two were the prominent leaders of this Shiva temple without priest. Okay. So, fine. So, there are various reformers and organizations starting from Brahmo Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Satya Shodhak Samaj. So, it all belongs to the memorization part. Fine, you have to memorize it. Questions come, you have to answer it. That's all. The less known things I have given it to you. Okay. Now let us go on to, we have already covered one set of battles like the Carnatic Wars, Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, Battle of Bedara. Now time for us to cover the Anglo-Mysore Wars and also Anglo-Maratha Wars. Anglo-Mysore Wars and also Anglo-Maratha Wars. Fine. So the first war, (1767 to 69). The reason being Hyder Ali's proximity to French. Second one, Hyder Ali captured Mangalore, and Mangalore was a very important port for Britishers because proximity to Western Ghats, export of spices. Mangalore was a very famous port through which they exported spices, and you all know it is spices that led to their main reason is spices. That is why they discovered the sea route from Europe to India. Spices, that is the main reason, and that Mangalore port was it was captured by Hyder Ali. Okay, and he was challenging the hegemony of the existing powers in the south, like Nizam of Hyderabad, Nawab of Carnatic, Nawab of Carnatic was a puppet under the hands of British East India Company, and then there was Marathas. He was challenging the hegemony of the existing powers. This is what led to the first Anglo-Mysore War. Fine. So what was the outcome? Treaty of Madras. Treaty of Madras. Okay. So both the forces, and in this war it was not just Hyder Ali versus British. Here it was East India Company plus Marathas plus Nizam versus Mysore. It was an equally fought battle. At the end of the treaty, both the forces agreed, okay, from now onwards we will not attack each other, we will be friends. Fine. So Britishers told from now onwards, friends, okay, mutual assistance in case of attack by anyone, mutual assistance and exchange of territories, prisoners, all those things. Whatever were captured from each other, we will exchange it. Okay. Fine. It was a battle where triple combined forces versus Mysore. Fine. And now second battle, 1780 to 84. 1780 to 84. Again, the main reason was French. Fine. So Hyder Ali's proximity to French, because there was American War of Independence, American Revolution, and during American Revolution, you all know, French supported Americans, Britishers lost America. So therefore what they did? They attacked French areas in India like Mahe. They attacked French areas in India like Mahe, and it was under the protection of Mysore. It was under the protection of Mysore, the kingdom of Mysore. So That is what led to the second war. And in between the war, in 1782, Hyder Ali passed away due to cancer, and the war was continued by his son Tipu Sultan. Okay, and here the treaty was Treaty of Mangalore. Treaty of Mangalore. So what they decided? Exchange of territories, prisoners. Fine. From now onwards, no conflict. So peaceful relationship is what they decided. Fine. Third war, 1792 to 93. Okay. Understood. Here again, triple combined forces versus Mysore. Triple combined forces versus Mysore. One of the main reason being again is proximity to French. And then there was a dispute between Tipu Sultan and the Raja of Travancore, or Travancore. So Britishers unnecessarily interfered in that dispute, okay, in that dispute between them. And finally, there was something called as Treaty of Srirangapatnam. Fine. Tipu had to surrender half of his territories. Fine. And he was forced to give war indemnity. He could not pay the entire amount. Therefore, he had to surrender his sons as guarantee. Surrender his sons as guarantee. Okay. And fourth one, 1799. So here again, triple combined forces versus Mysore. Only during the second war there was no triple combined force. Only during the second Anglo-Mysore war there was no triple combined force. First, third and fourth there was triple combined force versus Mysore. Why during second war there was no triple combined force? Because Anglo-Maratha war was going on, 1775 to 1782. And this Treaty of Mangalore, no? Besides that, write down. Tipu was the last Indian king. Tipu was the last Indian king to sign the treaty with the British, on equal basis. Last Indian king to sign the treaty with the British on equal basis. This was the last treaty. After that, every Indian king signed treaty with British as subordinates, not as equals. Okay. So, fourth war, triple combined forces versus Mysore. And again, the reason being the French Revolution and Napoleon's and Directory's call to invade India. Napoleon's and Directory's Directory of France, fine, they gave call to invade India. Okay, and who was the very trusted friend of France in India? Mysore. The most trusted friend of France in India was Mysore. Therefore, if they come to India, Mysore will definitely help them. If France tries to invade India and tries to capture it away from Britishers, who is going to help them? Definitely Mysore. So, triple combined forces attacked Mysore and Tipu Sultan died protecting his capital, and after this Mysore was restored to Wadayars, fine, and they signed the treaty called as subsidiary alliance. Treaty called as subsidiary alliance. Okay. So when was this treaty designed? 1798 by Wellesley. 1798 by Wellesley. So when was the doctrine of lapse designed? 1848. Not by Dalhousie, implemented by Dalhousie, designed by Court of Directors. Doctrine of lapse, not designed by Dalhousie. It was used effectively by Dalhousie. He did not design it. Doctrine of lapse was designed by the Court of Directors. Court of Directors, 1848. Fine. Satara, Sambalpur, Jaipur, they were the initial states where it was used to capture those areas. Then when it came to Jhansi, it became very famous because of Rani Lakshmi Bai and her bravery. Fine. So again, this subsidiary alliance, Wellesley. Permanent settlement, 1793, Cornwallis. 1793, Cornwallis. And similarly, Rayatwari settlement, Thomas Munro, fine. Who was the Alexander Reed? See, I am asking about this person. What do you call? The Governor General of Bengal at that time. When Rayatwari settlement, okay, Reed and Munro, fine, I know, fine. They are the architects of this Rayatwari system, Reed and Munro. But I am asking you, who was the Governor General of Bengal when Rayatwari settlement was introduced? Similarly, Mahalwari system, Mackenzie, we know that. But who was the Governor General at that time? Find out. Governor Generals when Rayatwari system was introduced and Mahalwari system was introduced. Okay. And what is subsidiary alliance? Write down the points under subsidiary alliance. Points under subsidiary alliance. First point, reducing the size of the native army. Reducing the size of native army. So imagine if you are the king of Mysore, let's say you had like 60,000 soldiers, you will bring it down to 5,000 soldiers. 55,000 you will remove. And what happens to those 55,000 soldiers? Agriculture. I know, not necessarily. Only the best among them was taken to British Army. Not everyone. Understood? Second point, British Army stationed. British Army stationed in the territory of Indian kings. And all the expenses has to be borne or taken care by the native ruler. All the expenses are to be borne or taken care by the native rulers. Next point, mutual assistance in case of attack by any third party. Mutual assistance. Mutual assistance. Next point, payment of annual tribute. Annual tribute. Next point. Fine, if you sign the subsidiary alliance, no? Fine. Advice of British is mandatory. Advice of British is mandatory to conduct any relationship with the Indian kings. Advice of British mandatory for you to conduct any relationship with the any business, fine, with the Indian kings. Next point, no foreigner was to be employed in the service. No foreigner except British. No foreigner except British has to be employed in the service. Next one, a British resident would be appointed in the court of Indian kings, and they would never interfere in the administration. And they would never interfere in the administration. What a promise. Nizam of Hyderabad was the first Indian king, followed by Mysore. Nizam of Hyderabad was the first Indian king, followed by Mysore, to sign it. Fine. What is the reason for designing that policy? UPSC can ask that. First reason, threat of French invasion. Second point, neutralize the French allies in India, like Mysore. Neutralize the French allies in India like Mysore, and neutralize the French allies in India like Mysore and transform the neutral kings as allies, Understood? Those who are the friends of French, you have to make them neutral, and those who are already neutral, you have to make them your allies. For example, Nizam of Hyderabad was a neutral person. He was not a very close friend of French and all. You have to make him an ally. How to do that? Subsidiary alliance. Fine. So here you will be entering into master subordinate relationship with the British. Master subordinate relationship. Britishers will be the masters and you are going to be the subordinate. You are going to lose your autonomy. Fine. That resident, though he claims that he will not interfere in any of your political and administrative matters, he will be the one dictating the terms. So this was the case. And then we will discuss about Anglo-Maratha wars. Anglo-Maratha wars. Fine. First war, (1775 to 1782). Fine. What was the reason? Internal rivalries among Marathas. Raghunath Rao, there was a Peshwa, he was removed. Fine. Peshwa Raghunath Rao was removed. Fine. And there was something called as Barabai conspiracy against him. and there was intent of East India Company to interfere in Maratha affairs. They badly wanted to interfere in Maratha affairs. Fine. So there was something called as Treaty of Surat. Fine. Between Raghunath Rao and East India Company. Okay. But Bharabhai, led by Nana Fadnavis, was not happy. Therefore, Britishers signed one more treaty. Treaty of what? Purandar, 1776, between Nana Fadnavis and East India Company. But Britishers did not adhere to the terms of the treaty. That led to the continuation of war. And finally, Treaty of Salbai, 1782. Okay. So both of them agreed not to fight against each other. Fine. So Britishers understood that Marathas are still very strong. We will not be able to mess with them. They adopted the wait and watch approach. And Marathas, their downfall had started because of internal rivalries and all. So that was the problem. Second, (1802 to 1804). Fine. Again, the internal rivalries among Marathas, especially between Holkar versus Peshwa and Bhosle. Holkar versus Peshwa and Bhosle. Okay. So at this point of time, there was a Peshwa called as Bajirao II. Don't mistake him with the great Bajirao. He is exactly opposite to that. And this Bajirao II was the son of Raghunath Rao or Raghoba. Fine. He was the first Maratha Peshwa to go to Britishers for seeking help. He was the one who brought the Britishers to internal affairs of Marathas. So he was a evil, cunning Peshwa, inefficient. And Bajirao II carried his DNA. So obviously, what kind of Peshwa he was, you can estimate. So he was attacked by the Holkar, Yashwantrao Holkar. So there was something called as Battle of Poona, and there he went running to Britishers just like his father and signed something called as Treaty of Bassein, 1802. When he was attacked by Holkar, he went running to British and signed something called as Treaty of Bassein. Now, Britishers told, we have only one treaty to help you, that is subsidiary alliance. This Treaty of Bassein consisted of subsidiary alliance also. So in haste, he signed it. In hurry, he signed it. Later, that was not acceptable to Bhosle. See, this Maratha confederacy consisted of Holkar, Gaikwad, Bhosle, Peshwa, Scindia. But this treaty was not acceptable to all of them. Peshwa signed it. But Peshwa is the leader of the group. So Britishers told, all of you are under me because your boss has signed it with me. But these people told, only Peshwa signed, we did not. Britishers asked, who is your leader? They told Peshwa. If leader has signed, it means all of you are under us. This problem started. Now all of them together except for Holkar. Gaikwad remained silent. Gaikwad did not want to bother. He told, fight. I am not going to enter. So these three forces, Scindia, Peshwa and Bhosle, started the war against the Britishers. Fine. So all these three forces versus British East India Company. Holkar did not join the war initially. When all of them were defeated, Holkar entered into the war. Right. Towards the end of the war, Holkar entered and he created he posed one of the greatest challenges to the British Empire in the 19th century. Fine. Single-handedly was able to turn the fortunes in favor of Marathas. But Britishers, they became clever. They called the reinforcements from Bengal, Madras, etc. They knew Holkar is going to be a very domitable threat to them. Therefore, they were able to finish off Holkar also. So, ultimately, after this, the entire Maratha confederacy had to sign the Treaty of Subsidiary Alliance, and entire central India, western India, most parts of eastern India and northern India came under the control of British. Starting from the river Krishna till the river Yamuna came under the control of British. Narmada, Yamuna, all those regions came under the control of British. Fine. So, third one, it is Naam ke Vaste. Naam ke Vaste. Marathas wanted to restore their lost pride. So, Peshwa Bajirao too, he wanted to give one last attempt. Fine. To restore the pride of Marathas. So, he fought against the Britishers. 1818, and there was a very famous battle called as Battle of Bhima Koregaon, 1st January 1818. In this battle, Maratha forces were defeated by British East India Company forces, consisting of the soldiers belonging to Mahar community, who are treated as untouchables by Marathas. So it was a kind of a moral victory for the depressed classes. They won against Marathas. Okay. In Salbai Treaty, why Tippu is asked? Hey, why will Tippu sign Salbai Treaty? Salbai Treaty is between Marathas and British. From where did Tippu come? Was he a guarantor or the witness? Fine. So this is the thing about Anglo-Maratha wars. Fine. So after this battle was over, Britishers told, from now onwards, you are going to be the last Peshwa, Bajirao too. After you, no succession. He was given pension. He was sent off to a small estate near Kanpur called as Bitur. It has another name called as Brahmavarta. And the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao too, his adopted son was Nana Sahib. He was one of the kings who revolted during 1857. Fine. So, adopted son. He was not given the pension. He was disrespected. Therefore, he revolted in 1857. Okay. So, anything else that you want me to discuss? Anything else? Why Dutch gave less competition? Less ambitious. No effective officials. Fine. Even in the entire world, the competition was between British and French. They were resourceful. They had very good administration. So it comes from their strength and capabilities at home. Fine. So at times Dutch was ruled by France only. So obviously. Anything else? I'll give you one handout, man. All three land revenue systems mentioned side by side. Fine. So zamindari system, rayatwari system, malwari system mentioned side by side. Okay. Read that. Anything else?
Sir, martial race.
Huh?
Martial race. Martial community.
Some communities were classified as martial community, for example, Sikh community. They were given primary emphasis in recruitment to British Indian Army. That's all. What do you want me to talk about it?
I want that how they classify them.
Built, physical built, heights, their fighting capacity and all. Fine. So, anything?
White immunity. White immunity.
Mutiny, 1850s. Some British soldiers unhappy with the working conditions in India, they revolted against their own administration. That is white mutiny. Not very important from our perspective. They came overseas, no. They were staying in India for a long period of time. Fine. They were also neglected by East India Company. They thought whatever salaries they are getting, they are not happy with it. Fine. They thought they deserved more, and there was again exploitation by the superiors. They were not taken care of. So this is a tropical country and they used to live in temperate country. No proper leaves or provisions to visit home. They revolted. Okay. Anything else?
Resignation campaign.
Huh?
Resignation campaign, resign campaign after 1936 government.
You mean to say 28-month rule?
No, sir. The resign campaign which was held after the formation of government in 1936.
That's what I am asking, man.
Yes.
See, the governments resigned because Britishers, they told INC as a Hindu organization. There was a Secretary of State called as Zetland. He told, like I'll tell you the sequence of events. 1st September, Poland got attacked by Germany. 3rd September, Britishers declared war on Germany. 3rd September 1939. So in that declaration, Winston Churchill told, India is also fighting along with us against the Germans. So Congress Working Committee asked a question to Britishers. So without consulting us, how can you declare about our support so certainly? Second thing, fine. How can a slave country like India fight for the independence of another slave like Poland? So if you respect so much, if you respect independence so much, give us independence first. So Britishers did not like these comments by the Congress. So what they did? The Secretary of State Zetland, he told INC is a Hindu organization. Gandhi was deeply pained that we doing so much to help Britishers and they are calling us as Hindu organization. INC was a secular organization with representation from all the communities of the society. They were representing all the interests. But the Secretary of State, he was not like any governor or any nonsensical person who talked about it. It was the Secretary of State who gave this statement, INC is a Hindu body. So Gandhi was pained. He told, resign. So that is why in 1939, all the INC ministries, they resigned and That's the reason you wrote on 28-month rule of INC. Why it ended in 28th month? Because they resigned. Understood? After this particular statement, they resigned. 1939 September, October, almost all the INC ministries in the provinces, they resigned. Fine. So because Gandhi told them to do so. I told you, no, conditional acceptance of office. Rajendra Prasad passed the resolution. Do you know what was the condition? When I tell you to resign, you resign. That is the condition. No questions asked. So Gandhi told them to resign, they resigned. That's all. He is the top leader, no? You have to listen. Okay. And they were allowed to form the office only upon the conditional acceptance of office. Condition was imposed by Gandhi. When I tell you to resign, you have to resign. Now Gandhi told resign, they have to resign. They resign. This is what you are talking about, no?
Yes.
Resignation campaign.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Anything else? Okay. Regulating Act 1773. Fine. So here, as we all know, Supreme Court was established at Calcutta with only the control over the British subjects. Strict rules and regulations. They cannot accept gifts and they cannot engage in any corrupt activities. And Governor of Bengal was made Governor General of Bengal. And Governor of Bombay and Madras were made subordinates to him. Pitt's India Act. Fine. So the British possessions, the East India Company possessions in India were called as British possessions. The British government told whatever areas you control in India, it belonged to us. Fine. And then they established the system of dual control. Dual control. So Court of Directors, they belong to East India Company. They control the trade and the commercial activities. And Board of Control, they represent the British government. They control the revenue, military, all these aspects of East India Company. Fine. And then, did you write it down? You wish to write down. Fine. So here the Governor General of Bengal was given the veto power. Here he did not have any veto power. No veto for him. Pitt's India Act, veto power was given. Fine. Understood? So, Board of Control, Court of Directors. Court of Directors will be the company directors. Every company will have a directors, no? Administrative board. So, they will control the trade activities of the company. Now, British government wanted to keep an eye on East India Company and its functioning. Therefore, they appointed a Board of Control, controlling the revenue, civil and military affairs of East India Company. That is what we together call as dual control. Sorry? Sorry? See, Court of Directors and Court of Proprietors are same, man. Nomenclature. Okay? So you can call it as however you want. But the functions is what matters. Okay? So, next thing, there was Charter Act of 1793. Again, they extended the what do you say? The company's license to trade with India for another 20 years. Fine. 1793, Charter Act of 1793, 20 years more permission, and then the British government allowed the Association of Indians in Administration, at least for clerical positions and all, they allowed. So write down 1793, British government allowed the Association of Indians in administration. Fine. Association of Indians in administration at the clerical level. At the clerical level. Fine. Okay. Next one, 1793. Lucid division. Lucid means not watertight or not very strict. Lucid means simple.
Administration of Indians, how about 93 में था या 84?
93. 93. Fine. 93 extended for 20 years. Second point, administration. Indians were allowed at clerical level. Third point, lucid division. Lucid separation of executive and legislative functions. Executive and legislative functions of Governor General's Council. Okay, fine. 1813, financial grants for education of Indians, allowed the Christian missionaries to preach in India. 1813, allowed the Christian missionaries to preach in India. Financial grants for education of Indians. Fine. End of monopoly of East India Company with regard to commercial activities. End of monopoly of East India Company with regard to commercial activities, except for trade with China and tea. Except for trade with China and tea. Next point, open licensing system. Open licensing system was introduced for British merchants to trade with India. Was introduced for British merchants to trade with India. Fine. Okay. Next point. Act of 1833. Act of 1833. You all know Governor General of Bengal became Governor General of India, and all the governors became subordinates to him. Fine. Open competitive system for civil services was introduced. Open competitive system for civil services was introduced, but Indians not allowed. But Indians not allowed. East India Company became purely administrative body. All the commercial functions was abolished. Financial resources were extremely centralized at the hands of Governor General. Financial resources extremely centralized at the hands of Governor General. Law Commission was appointed. Law Commission was appointed. So who was there in the Law Commission? Macaulay. Thomas Babington Macaulay. Law Commission. Okay. Fine. 1853. Mini parliament, system of mini parliament or imperial legislative council was introduced. System of mini parliament or imperial legislative council was introduced. Fine. Next point. For the first time, legislative and executive functions of Governor General separated. For the first time, legislative and executive functions of Governor General was separated. And 6 members were added to ILC. 6 members were added to ILC. Fine. Okay. So it was all there. 1861 portfolio system. The powers of ordinance, veto and emergency was given. New presidencies were created. Okay. And then Indians were associated. 3 Indians were added into ILC. 3 Indians were added to ILC. Though in non-official capacity, 3 Indians were added. Okay. Why women representation suddenly increased? Who told suddenly increased? Women participation, not representation. Because awareness, Gandhian movement, peace, everybody can take part. And Tilak had strived very hard to build the confidence. And women rights movements also started at the same time. 1817, I told you, Annie Besant, Margaret Cousins, they all met Southborough Committee seeking the voting rights for women. So it all happened. So rise of consciousness, rise of education among the women, spread of literacy, SNDT Women's University, Dando Keshav Karve 1916. So it was not sudden, it was an evolutionary process. 1920 women's participation was still less, 1930 it increased, 1942 it reached its peak. So that's how it happens. It's a gradual evolutionary process. There is no sudden spike without any reason in history. Okay. So, anything else? Anything that you want me to discuss or talk about? Any doubts you have? Are you sure? You solved the question papers? Were you able to solve most of it? Did you realize your mistakes while solving it? No. And then it's a lengthier process. Okay, fine. So, 10:30 already. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
See you all again. Wish you all the very best for the prelims. Okay. So, revisions is the key to success. Give at least 4 to 5 quality revisions of every subject. Fine. So don't have any weak areas or don't take any subject for granted. So some of them were telling like, sir, modern India the questions have decreased. But who knows? 2024 it might increase. Why do you want to take risk? See, one thing about UPS is they never want to set a trend. U stands for unpredictable. You know it already. Then why to take a risk? Fine. So be prepared for all eventualities. Don't go to examination with a fixed mindset. I am going to answer 75 questions or 90 questions. Any 50-50 I am not going to spare. I am going to mark it all. So that kind of mindset is not going to help you in this process. So be liberal, have open mind, go gauge the difficulty level of the question paper. Fine, you will be able to gauge the difficulty level only after going through the entire paper for at least one round. And again, while going through one round, you should know what is a part of your awareness and what is not. So if you don't know something, obviously chuck it, leave it, go to the next question. And no question carries 2 marks. Don't carry the hangover of the previous question to the next question. Fine, every question is a fresh challenge to you. Fine, and make sure you work very hard to utilize every second in the 2 hours to your advantage. Fine. So while practicing in the test series only, you should do that. So that chart which I showed you, like with regard to sure, 50-50, guess, how many you got right, how many you got wrong. If at all you got wrong, why did you go wrong? Find out the reasons. Fine. So initially it takes time. It takes time because the problem is deep within you. To unearth it, to understand it, it will take time. But once you rectify it, you'll never commit that mistake again. Fine. So it is not only through knowledge you can increase the number of right answers in the examination. It is also through rectification of your mistakes. You can increase the number of positives. Like less wrong answers you mark, it means more positives you get. No, accuracy will increase. How to control your negatives? By understanding where you go wrong and limiting yourself or controlling your weakness. That is how you do. Fine. It is not only through knowledge this exam is cleared. You should have the right aptitude to deal with the things here. So again, reading n number of books is fine, but that alone is not going to help you. Fine. So remember that, and fine. Once again, all the very best. Fine. See you all after prelims. Okay. So if you have any doubts, like you can mail it to support@insidesIAS.com, or you have my Telegram ID. Okay. So expect the delay in the response because I will be handling like 2 or 3 classes a day over in Bangalore also. But I will get back to you for sure. Okay. And before asking, like things are already available on YouTube for free. Like glance through it once, and if you have any doubts, like please feel free to ask. Okay. Handout wise, I have told you support@insidesIAS.com. They are the key to deliver the handouts to you. I don't know through what method deliver it to you, but they are the key. I have done my part of work. Everything is with them. They have to give it to you. Fine. So don't ask me personally on Telegram. I am not supposed to do it. It's against my moral commitment. Fine. I can't do it. I cannot share it with individually. It has to come through the official channels. See, we are connected through this platform of Insights IAS. So I can answer your doubt because I am committed to it. Fine. But handouts and all, it's a kind of property of Insights, because many a times content team will also work in the background to that. It's the property of my institution. So only they have to give it to you. I can't give it to you. Okay. Fine. Thank you.